Hey, Chris.
Hey,
How's it going?
pretty good. How are you doing?
Good, good. Josh is all ready. We did a test there and got YouTube set up about 10 minutes ago or so. So I think it's just going to be a bunch of blank. Oh, I totally didn't do. Let's see. How fast can I Photoshop something?
Depends on what you're doing, I guess. Right?
Last month I was a little bit more prepared. I'm gonna make you co-host.
Yeah, I was gonna ask if the.
Or I don't know how many co-hosts. Can I make everybody? Yeah. Just make everybody co-host.
Cool. Yeah, click wrong.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Let me see if I can Photoshop something here. Be right back. All right, let's see how I did. My 5-minute Photoshop job.
When you get a second, look at the Q&A. We got Bob Strakansky asking couple of things.
All right. Here we go. Sure. Yeah. So
How embarrassing would that be if I didn't follow you?
I know, right? Yeah, so yeah, that's correct, Bob. So how the webinars on Zoom work is it's only the panelists and the co-hosts have like full regular Zoom access, and then all the attendees, the people that register by the normal process, they have limited access to Zoom, so that we eliminate any potential chance of spam or hate being spread by the webinar. And so the audio is not enabled for attendees. The video obviously not enabled as well. And then the chat is moderated. And so the chat is essentially the Q&A feature. And so if you have a question or want to interact with audience, while the presentation is going on with the presenter, while the presentation is going on, just submit a question via that Q&A button at the bottom, and we will one of the panelists will review it and make sure that it's good, and make sure that it shows up there under answered. So actually, I don't know how it looks for you guys, but for us, there's like 3 tabs. There's like open questions, answered questions, and then like, ignored, not answered questions. Yeah, maybe it's just one window for you. But yeah, that's basically how webinars work. Worked really well for Awesome PHP last month, and yeah, I'm happy that Boston and Atlanta are joining us this month. I'm excited for the future for MergePHP, so we'll get started here relatively soon. I think maybe 5 after or so. There's, I guess the good news, I don't know, Bobby and Chris, like, where you guys normally met in person, but for us, like, that we've been meeting at this Region 13 Service Center for a while, and we'd always have to, the doors would lock at like 6 or 6:30 or something, and so we always had to station somebody at the door to let people in. So we started a little bit late, always, just so that people are running late and whatnot. But if it's a virtual thing, we can start, relatively on time.
Should probably still give it a couple minutes for anyone who has to install Zoom for the first time or something like that.
Yeah.
We had that one week. Bobby was a good 10 minutes late because he couldn't install Zoom on his work laptop.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Sure.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and start the recording here. I mean, it's streaming on YouTube, but officially start the Zoom recording. Pause. Stop share. I can find the record button. All right, we're officially recording now. recording now. Oh yeah, so if you have the YouTube stuff open, there may be some. Hopefully that's not me while I'm lecturing other people, but make sure you have the YouTube stream muted if you're attending or listening in on Zoom, so that there's no like reverb. And then people can chat as well on YouTube directly. So I am not signed in to YouTube. I don't know how I'm streaming to YouTube, but not signed in. I don't know it's working. But if you guys can monitor or kind of help monitor,
Yeah, I'll monitor it.
that would be helpful. I can see what people are typing, but I can't respond. Yes. Yep. So Chris Forens asked, so yeah, we started streaming to YouTube. Well, we did the live streams in person. We were meeting in person with OBS, and Derek was kind of responsible for that. And yeah, so there's a bunch of videos there on our channel of not just PHP, but some other stuff. And then, last month we did this webinar stuff. And at first I tried using the Facebook streaming to see if that would work. And it wasn't as good as the YouTube. So just go with YouTube. Well, I think we can get started on the intro stuff if you guys are ready.
Quick thing, Logan. The Omni's asked for the link for the YouTube chat.
Oh.
I don't think I have that directly.
Yeah. Let me post it here. I replied to Chris. I don't know. Or should I send it? Who
I'll
asked the
reply
question?
to Omni as well.
Okay.
Or not in that case.
Cool.
Yeah, we got more than one Chris. I was like, wait a minute, what happened? The other Chris got the link.
Yeah.
No worries.
I was on the wrong tab.
One Chris. I was like, wait a minute, what happened?
I didn't see the open question from Omni. I replied to Chris Prince, but it looks like Omni got it. All right. Well, I think we're gonna do some intro stuff. I think there at the beginning, and then we'll get started with Josh's presentation. So I'm talking, but I don't want to go first. I want to go last. Bobby or Chris, whoever wants to go first.
Go ahead, Bob, if you want. I just need a half a second here. Or I can share momentarily.
Oh, maybe I should stop sharing. You said you want to share something?
It says, yeah, I went to share and says we'll stop other screen sharing. So yeah.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Okay, well, welcome everybody. This is Chris Spruck from Atlanta PHP. Just some quick things we want to run through. I'll try to keep this real short and sweet. Just like to thank our sponsors, Variux.com, a really good Magento consulting shop, is our video sponsor for our archive, so we appreciate their support. Shoeproof.com as well, venue and gold level sponsor. Tom's Technologies, platinum level sponsor, longest term sponsor we have. Yield Quality as well, all Atlanta firms. A few things just we like to mention, conferences and events, especially if they're local. Laracon US is on an online event August 26th this year. Connect Tech in Atlanta, October 14th through the 16th is a later new date. So for Atlanta people, you can still check that out. That's not so PHP specific, but really good polyglot conference. Great support there. Obviously, we'll probably hear about Longhorn from the Austin guys, but their CFP is still open. And the conference still slated for October 15th through the 17th. And also Refactor.tech here in Atlanta, September 15th through 17th, 2021. They just pushed it a whole year out based on COVID response and things like that. So that'll be delayed from there. Also, just a quick reminder, our message forum, atlantaphp.org is our primary site that's not Meetup. We've got our video archive, and if you want to contact any of us, certainly feel free. For the other groups and attendees from the other groups, our video archive is free and open, so you can check out our prior talks going all the way back to 2012. So check us out if you're interested in seeing some other presentations. That's all I got. Thank you very much.
Awesome, Chris. That's a good archive of videos that you have. So that's definitely worth checking out.
Thanks.
And I'm not quite sure if Bobby's ready. Yes.
I didn't have a presentation prepared. I wasn't expecting to get one, but I'll just quickly say I'm Bobby Cahill. I represent Boston PHP, and I just want to say we're all excited to work together with Atlanta PHP and Austin PHP on this. We don't really have any CFPs or anything like that going on right now, or any sponsors at the moment. So just let me know, like if you're interested in giving a talk or anything like that, you can contact me. Our website is, we're still Meetup, so it's meetup.com/BostonPHP, one word. And I think I used to be Bobby at bostonphp.org, but I don't even know if that works anymore. So you can just contact me through the Meetup site. Just go to our Meetup page, and there's a way to contact me through there. And if you want to give a talk, if you have something you want to hear a talk about, and maybe we can go find someone to give a talk on it for you, just hit us up. Let us know.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Bobby and Chris. I'm really excited for this MergePHP, and I think we've got some great plans for the rest of the year. So I'm looking forward to continuing this throughout 2020 for sure. I think we've got a lot of great talks planned, and certainly a lot of interest here. So the webinar stuff with Zoom is definitely the way to go. I think we made a good decision there. Josh is an accomplished speaker. He was organizer for Austin PHP for about a decade, and he's still co-organizer. And I've kind of took the reins back in 2011. And before we kind of get into the talk stuff, I actually started intro, but I wanted to talk a little bit about Longhorn PHP, and I'm going to pass the mic over to Ian. And if you want to say a few words, Ian, there, and maybe give us an update, or just let us know what's going on with Longhorn. That would be great.
Sure. So Longhorn PHP is still at this point scheduled for middle of October. You can go to longhornphp.com for additional information. Our CFP is still open. It'll be open until the end of the month. And but based on current trends on the COVID side, we'll make a decision on based on where we're at talk submission wise and where we're at in terms of ticket sales, whether we will be keeping the conference in October or postponing so that we don't end up smack dab in the middle of a second wave. In either case, the conference will be in person on site at a new venue for this year, the Holiday Inn Midtown here in sunny Austin, Texas. And if you have further questions, you can hop on the website at longhornphp.com. And again, please do, if you have talk ideas, submit them at cfp.longhornphp.com.
Awesome. Thank you. I think hopefully we'll get a in-person conference this year, but I think we've got some good backup plans there. So looking forward to seeing all your lovely faces again at some point. So Josh, back to Josh. You can find him Jimbo JSB on Twitter. He is a Senior Vice President of Product and Technology at Ziff Media Group. He loves BMWs. He lives here in Austin. Really great guy, really great speaker. And I'm interested to hear this talk. I know he was a big fan of Algolia. He gave an Algolia talk a couple years ago, something like that, and recommended we should all be using Algolia. So now maybe he's taking it back in that statement up a bit and revising and so maybe like an asterisk in we'll see. We'll have to see. So MeiliSearch, I think this will be an interesting one. So Josh, if you're ready, I think I'll stop sharing my screen and let you take over, and we can officially get MergePHP June 2020 underway.
Yeah, let's do it.
Stop sharing my screen.
All right. Let's see. Good?
Yep, all good.
All right. So thank you for that intro, Logan. You have now obviated one of my slides. So we're going to talk about search today. Man, you like half my slides, man. So luckily we've got code as well as slides. So my name is Josh. I'm the SVP of Product and Technology at Ziff Media Group. That's offers.com, PCMag, Mashable, BlackFriday.com. I have the privilege of working with like actual scale, which is not something I could always have said. But yeah, like Black Friday, that's like big boy internet traffic. And so that's been a really fun thing to work on. I'm Jimbo JSB online, pretty much everywhere. Twitter and GitHub, the ones you probably care about, because that's what AOL said I should be called in 1995. And so I just stuck with it ever since. So search matters. Search is like the primary way people navigate the internet in 2020. Users expect it, right? They expect it on Facebook, they expect it on Twitter, they expect it on other social media, they expect it in the stuff that you would build as well. If you have the good fortune to be producing enough data that your app is interesting. Like users are going to expect search. The trouble is they expect it to be as good as Google, and it's usually not, right? You don't have 1,000 PhD engineers building a search engine for you. You have like some open source tech, or like maybe a vendor, or like maybe just like a pretty cleverly written SQL statement, and some money to throw in a fast database server. And that's okay. And you know, the other thing that I've seen throughout my career is that people search for really stupid things. You know, the amount of times that I have put a search box on there, and then, you know, of course, the business folks immediately are like, well, make sure we write down what people are searching for, so we can do some analytics on that. And then within hours, we have to go figure out how to redact the search logs because of the stupid crap people put in search boxes. My favorite is credit card numbers. Like they just literally put their credit card number into the search box, and I'm like, oh my god, we've got to get rid of this. I don't want anything to do with this. So just brace for that, because it's going to happen. The other thing is like really good search, like what I would delightful search as a user experience. It's not cheap. I mean, you can do it, but like you got to put some effort into it. And, you know, I think there's a gulf between like table stakes, like you can search for something, but like search works, right? Like, you know, at least in my career, like search is one of those things that is like product manager kryptonite. You can't come up with the right answer. People are gonna, you know, hey, we put a new search box out and it's got autocomplete, and then like relevancy is really good, and like immediately someone will be like, well, I searched for this thing and it didn't come up with the answer correctly, and like then you're down in a rabbit hole trying to figure out why would they even think that way. But anyway, the point is it matters. You almost have to have it if you have an app worth having at this point. So I will own this. I said in public multiple times, you should forget all of the other bullshit and you should just use Algolia and you should pay them. Algolia is really, really good. We are extensive users of it across all of our brands and a lot of our internal tools. We actually, in some cases, use Algolia like sort of like a federated database, almost like a document database. And it's the best search product on the market. I have no doubt in saying that. It still is. It gets really expensive. And the way I came across what we're going to talk about tonight, I think it was on Twitter, but it was just really well timed, because normally I would have just passed over it. But I was in like enterprise contract negotiations with Algolia, and they're kind of pissing me off. And so I didn't put this together to spite them. It just happened to be these MeiliSearch people caught my eye at the right time, and I thought I'd give it a shot. And I was excited enough about it that I wanted to tell other people about it, because I think especially you know, for toy projects or for small internal things where you just need something that works and you don't have, you know, a couple $100 a month to spend on indexing 1 million documents or whatever it costs. Yeah, that's there should be other options for that, and they shouldn't be impossible. And I think it's good that we, you know, people are still innovating in the space, and they're still, you know, I'm sure MeiliSearch is going to build a SaaS and they're going to go after Algolia price wise. But I think the other thing that I've seen with a lot of SaaS products, not just search, is that you get sucked in on that, like, just put your credit card in and get a free trial, and it's $9.99 a month, or it's $30 a month. And like somewhere over the time that you start using it, the pricing model changes, and it's not nearly as favorable to the size app that you are. It turns out that you sit in this like uncanny valley where, like, you know, you went from like $30 a month to $1,000 a month to get the same thing. And that's what I would do if I had a SaaS product. I would want to drive people up the price scale, but so part of this is definitely born out of my annoyance with Algolia's pricing. The other thing I will say that they are freaking great at is if you are building faceted search, like a left nav on Amazon or Newegg, where you've got the checkboxes and you want to refine down a result set, and you want to give users the parenthetical counts of like, you know, how many results will you get if you add this filter, and not allow them to pick dead end filters that return no results, you should still use Algolia because it is almost designed for that. It's so good. And so that's definitely not what we're going to talk about tonight, is like pure faceted search. So that's definitely something to keep in mind, is the difference between like a text autocomplete style search and faceting. It's not quite the same thing. So what about the other things, right? Elasticsearch is the big one, right? I don't think anybody's really sitting there and like running. Gosh, I remember when we first launched offers.com, we were using Zen framework and Zen search Lucene and like manually rotating out search indexes on a file server somewhere. I don't think anybody's doing that. But what about Elasticsearch, right? Elasticsearch is great, does a lot of stuff. It's very powerful as a document store. The problem is like it doesn't, it seems like it's expensive to operate to me. Getting it going, making sure that it's backed up properly, or that it's full, you know, you want a highly available Elasticsearch, like you need a cluster and then it's split brains, and like, I don't know, it just seems like really heavy machinery for what I think a lot of people's search use case is. So that's my take on that, is like that's got a place, but I don't think it's right for a lot of consumer facing lightweight applications. I think it's too complicated. So this is MeiliSearch. I will preface this by saying I'm not an expert in this. We just got this into production for one application. I think it's cool, and I wanted to tell you about it. But like, it's not like I have years of experience with this or anything. It's 0.1. It's brand new stuff. So it is young, but it seems to do a lot. And the cool thing is open source, right? Like you can see who's working on it. You can see who's hacking on it. You can see that it's maturing, and you can see that there are like, you know, there's some momentum behind it. You have some visibility into that. It's written in Rust. So, you know, the Rust fanboys are going to be all over it. And I'm sure they're going to get some love for the fact just that it's written in Rust. I got nothing against Rust. I just think it's, you know, things that are written in Rust are super trendy. Maybe this is a good match for the Rust stuff that's in Firefox. We're a fully Docker shop. And so the one nice thing about this is it runs great in Docker, locally or in production. And, you know, they put out a official Docker image that is, you know, a very easy quick start, just to get it up on your laptop or get it up on a server somewhere and start using it. So that's nice. And it's all APIs, right? It's all just a RESTful API, and it's really a pretty simple API. They've got a lot of client packages. They've got a Go package. They've got a PHP package, JavaScript, a couple other like just client libraries that are built. And they've done a really nice job of making them all have like a really consistent API, like a developer experience. Like they made them all very similar to each other, even across the languages. It also does have a Laravel Scout driver. That's actually how we're using it. Is we're now almost entirely a Laravel shop, and we're using it with Scout for most of the stuff. So if you want to get this up and running, which we'll show, we'll run it and show how it works. I would normally just use Docker. I actually am not going to use Docker for this demo because it's written in Rust. It's just a little binary. Like you can get it with curl. I installed it on my Mac with Homebrew and just have a little local instance of it. But normally I would use Docker for that. There's really not a lot of settings. Most of the settings are like what we call like runtime settings. They're stored somewhere else, but like the server itself, it only has a couple options. Like where do you put the database file at? Where, you know, and so the master key is one important thing. You get to make up the key. You can pass it on the command line. And that's the API key for writes. So, you know, searches are reads and they're fine. But if you want to write or you want to do admin things, you need that master API key. So that's a setting that you would want to set. And then there's an env, you know, a production or a development. And that basically changes the way the API key works a little bit, and also changes the log verbosity that you will see on the console. The production one has less logging than a development one would. But that's kind of it. Like you literally can just run /MeiliSearch and like set none of these things and be up and going. You don't have to care about any of that, just to play with it. So development mode, if you're in development mode, you don't need a master key. It's optional. You can specify it if you'd like one, but you don't have to specify one. And at that point, like you can read, write, admin, no password, no anything, which is how we're going to use it this evening. In production, the master key is a required option. Like if you say the environment is production, then you must supply a master key. And then, like I said, you get more logs on the console in development. So let's talk about how this thing's organized. So you bring a server up, it writes, a couple of files out to disk storage where it's actually storing the indices at. So those indexes are collections of JSON documents. They have one field that's defined as the primary key, and you can define what that field is, or it will infer it if it can. But it is required that it understand what the primary key of a document is. There's some magic on the inference. Basically, it looks for something that has the letters ID in it, and also that field has to be unique, right? And so if it's like, oh, there's a document underscore ID and it is all unique, then it just, if you don't tell it otherwise, it just decides that that's going to be the primary key. So you can put your JSON in there. You can, there's a bunch of relevancy settings. We're not really going to get into the relevancy stuff tonight in detail, mostly because it's hard to explain that without like a very specific use case and your personal data set, because it's just a toy example that doesn't really make any sense without like an actual problem to solve. I find that the default relevancy settings for like autocomplete style search are basically fine. I didn't find too much reason to actually tweak them, but you can customize quite a bit there. The only thing that I don't like about this, and my guess is they change it, is that indexes are not implicitly created, and Algolia they are, and a lot of other search and document stores they are. So like you can't put a document into an index until you have created that index. And so that's, I don't know, kind of annoying when you just want to play. But it's, one or two lines of code to go use the API and create an index. So just something to be aware of, and we'll look at how that behaves in a little bit here. So then in your index, you have documents, and documents have fields. So the primary key field, it has to be values that are, alphanumeric, underscores, and dashes. Can be capital, lowercase, doesn't matter. So whatever field you're going to use as the ID the ID has to be kind of ID-ish as far as what's in it. You can just dump JSON in here for the most part. I haven't really seen it not work. I didn't really, it doesn't say this, but it feels from my experimentation with this, is that I didn't love the idea of like deep nesting JSON, which potentially is something that's much more appropriate for Elasticsearch, is like complex JSON documents. This to me felt like what it wanted me to do was turn a PHP model that was coming out of a database or something like that into a one level JSON document, or possibly like one with like, you can put objects, you can put sub documents, but I don't actually know if you can successfully do sub documents, because the API doesn't seem to suggest that you can. I didn't really mess with it that much, but I think for most use cases you wouldn't need it anyway. So the relevancy, with the settings, you can choose how the order of operation for these things, and you can kind of choose whether you care about them at all, right? So it can do typo search, where like it's searching and indexing for near matches based on what it thinks would be a typo. How many times does your term show up in the document? How close to each other. If you have a 2 or 3 word search phrase, how close are the words to each other, right? So if they all appear in order as you typed them, that's obviously more than like them appearing in the document, but it's, they're 1,000 characters apart or something like that. So you can do that. Attribute preference. So which fields are more important, right? So you can say that like, hey, a match in the name field is more important than a match in the description field, for example. And then, within those, are the words closer to the beginning of the field or are they closer to the end of the field? If it's a long piece of text. And then, exactness, right, would be the most important. And like, this is a character for character match. So it's doing a bucket sort on all of those things. And so you can turn parts of this on and off that you don't care about. You can change the order, whether like more matched terms or less matched terms is how the way you want it to work. And then you can change which one of these things, like which do you care most about? Do you care most about proximity? Do you care most about typos? So you can kind of send an array of values in as far as like how you'd like this to be configured, like almost like an order by statement. And it can do that, and you can control that on an index by index basis, right? So you can have most likely an index represents a database table of some sort, or a collection of like things, and so you can change the rules not at the server level, but you can change them at the index level. So the other thing is you can add custom relevancy things. It's not super flexible. You can basically say like, hey, I've got some numeric fields like values, like price or something like that. And you can add those into the mix of relevancy, and you can say like ascending or descending. So you can say like, word position and proximity, but the next thing that's most important is the cheapest match. You can't do it with text. It has to be numbers. And so that's probably getting into like, are you tweaking it beyond the point of, returns? I don't know. But you can do it. So this thing comes with a little web interface. It's just a little search box, like an autocomplete type ahead sort of thing that shows you the results of searching your index. It's not like amazing, but it's useful just to see like, hey, I got some documents in, and like, let me just see what the search does. Since a lot of those settings are in the index itself, so if you set an index up a certain way, you can then see how the search behaves without having to go write an app against it. That's pretty much all it's good for. It's just like a casual browse of what there is, but they're adding stuff to it. It's improved since I started playing with this. Just a couple bugs that got fixed, but it is going. The other thing that is like useful in a web browser, and it's raw JSON. So if you have some sort of JSON prettifier, that's nice to have. Is just the stats API. And it's mostly just like you can see how many documents are in there. You can see whether the index is being updated currently or not. All of these requests that you make into the system, like they're asynchronous, right? So they come back immediately, and then it's going to sit there. If you give it 10,000 documents in a post request, it's going to sit there and chew on the indexing for a couple seconds on that. And so you can see, you could query if you want, or I just go to in a browser just to see what's happening. And see that my stuff is getting updated and that kind of thing. But also, the stats API is all fully integrated into the client if you want to record or anything like that. So get to the end here, the stability of this thing, it's not 1.0, it's 0.1. I think the docs are great, but it is going to change, right? Like they're adding features. Allegedly they're adding that faceting support. Like I was saying, you really want to use Algolia for the faceted search. They're adding stuff. I haven't seen in the couple of months that I've been playing, I haven't seen the API change as much as just be added to. So it seems to be, kind of stable. Roughly, like again, if they're doing semantic versioning, who knows? But it seems like you could go pin a version of this down in a Docker file or something like that, and like you could put this in production. We did. We've got a couple million documents in this, and it seems fine. So before we get into the rest of it, fast and easy to use. You could get going with this really quickly. I would say, if you have any DevOps or Docker chops at all, like you can get playing with this as fast as you can go create an Algolia account. And I guess I'm going to show you some code, and we're going to kind of poke around with this thing and see how it behaves. But you don't need me for that, right? Like the documentation is not long. It's well written, and all the stuff that you want to know is in there, and it's got examples. So definitely check the docs out. At this point, I've given you the information that this thing exists, and I'm going to show you kind of how it works. But like beyond that, like it's pretty straightforward. You can just go play. And so I think any questions, Logan, that are in the channel, or anybody that are in the channel, before we go look at some code?
I think we had one earlier. I guess Omni was asking, like, do you think they found our credit card number when they were searching for it?
So we were running my company does affiliate marketing, right? We sell stuff for other people and they get paid a commission. One of the things we sell is credit cards. And so when people come, we buy ads. And when people, like they search, they go to Google and they search for like, Citi double cash rewards card. What they really want to do is pay their bill. And so, but we have an ad and we're the first results. And it's not to pay your bill, it's to sign up for the card. So people click through on our site and they're like, I don't know, where do I log in at? Like, I don't even know what's happening. And so then they're like, well, let's just type the credit card number in the old search box here and see if they find it. And no, they never did find it. I'm pretty sure they never found it. Anyway, so let's get Keynote out of the way here. So this is, it's MeiliSearch.com. They've got, like I said, really nice docs. I installed this on my Mac, doing this, just brew install MeiliSearch. But I, normally if I was going to actually play with this, it would be with Docker. I was just trying to get this set up to do this particular demo. So I've got a project over here, and the main thing that I have in here is I have some data sets. So I went on data.gov and I got this, I don't know, 5,900, this list of cities, and this is allegedly like every city and state in the US or something like that. Because I just wanted like something, right? And then this ended up not being all that interesting for my demo. And so I went and exported 30 some odd thousand, maybe 25,000 records out of our merchant database from work, which is this is all publicly available data. You can go on offers.com and look at it. But these are bigger things. They've got like legit text and stuff that goes with them, like, that an editor has written. I use this data set to demo stuff all the time because it's, it's what, 87 megs of JSON. So I got those. So the first thing I think we'll do is, let's just start up Meili real quick. So I'm gonna just come over here. I'm just gonna type MeiliSearch. This is installed on my computer. So you can see like it just comes up with your basic stuff, development environment, no master key, so there's no security. But so that should get us going, right? So if I come over back to Firefox, so you can see the web interface. I don't know why it says it has 25 documents because it definitely does not. But this is just kind of the basics. So we know it's running. It actually went ahead, because I didn't tell it otherwise, it made a data.ms folder in here, which is where it's going to store its stuff. So we'll leave that running in that window. And let's go ahead and composer require, let's see, MeiliSearch. I think that's what it's called. So we'll get their client to come down here. My guess is that's not what it's called, or No, look, there it is. Here it comes. So it's just using Guzzle under the hood to do some web requests. So let's just throw some code together here and start playing with this. So I'm going to make let's do create index. So the first thing we need to do, like I said, is you need to actually make an index in order to put something in it. So I will pull this guy in. So we're just going to point that at localhosts. I think this actually wants a full URL. 7700, and that's where my little server is running locally. The other cool thing about this is all HTTP, so you can proxy it, you can route it, you can name virtual host it, you can put traffic in front of it, you can theoretically even go in and like CDN cache the results of it. If you wanted to, if you were doing powering like production website stuff, you could put Cloudflare in front of this if you wanted to. A lot of options there since it's all HTTP. Let's do create index cities. We'll play with the cities data set first. So we'll go ahead and run this. So that's not, this is my super strong live coding. I need that guy. So we got nothing. So we can come over here and we'll still see nothing here, except for now it knows there's no documents in it because it's actually got an index and it knows about cities. So let's pull this up in another tab and look at the stats API. So you can see like I've got 0 documents, no fields or anything. It's not indexing, but I can see that my index is in here. So that's good. So now let's go back and actually put some data into here. So I'm just going to make another file to start with. Let's just copy and paste this. So now that I know that this index exists, I don't need to create it again, but I do need to get it. So I want to do like index equals client get index cities. So if you're really going to go like hook this up to something, what you probably want to be doing is, I would almost think of this like a database migration or something. Like I'd have like a PHP script somewhere in my project that had like the big array of all my settings and indexes and that kind of stuff, and I could just run that. And you could go in and say like, look at all the indexes and see if any need to be created. And I think they're probably going to improve that. I can't imagine that not like index creation to me should be idempotent. If it doesn't exist, it should just start existing. But we'll see if they actually get around to that. So I'm going to go ahead and go in here and we'll get some cities. Let's do JSON code, get contents. So we got a list of cities here. So then we'll just do index add documents cities. And this happens to already be in the right format, which is an array of JSON object documents here. So I don't really have to do too much to that. So then we'll just go ahead and run this and see what happens. I'm gonna tell you right now, we expect an error for this. So actually, wrong file. So could not infer a primary key. So like I told you, you do need to specify a primary key, but it will try and find one for you. And here it couldn't, because if you look at what I gave it, there is no primary key here. There's no field that's the unique identifier. So it's not going to be able to make one up for me. So I need to actually modify this data a little bit so that it has one. So we're just going to go ahead and give these basically like auto increments. That should be the other way around. So we're just going to go ahead and take these documents this actually for sure an array. We're going to go ahead and just put an ID on here so they have one. And then we should be good here. Good. So now if we come over here and we look, we can see we got 1,576 documents in here. We're not indexing, which means like, you know, not that we expected this to take very long, but like the time it took me to alt tab over here, like it's already done indexing those. And you can see like I've got no ragged fields here, right? Every document has every field. That's not terribly important, but it does kind of give you that visibility. So let's just come in here and see what we got, right? So if I search Austin, you can see I get, you know, three results back, and it took less than a millisecond to answer that, right? If I search like, you know, New York, you can see that it's coming back with answers here like nearly instantaneously. And granted, this is a very small data set that's very like high cardinality. It's well searchable. But I mean, this is a pretty snappy user experience that it's coming back with. And you can see that like, I'm sorry, BOST, right? And I've got these, and as soon as the defaults, as soon as I hit an exact, Boston, which was further down, is now way higher up. And the order has changed because now it knows that an exact match is important. So this is just kind of like how you would poke at this stuff. So let's look at how do we see like how fast this actually is. So one of the things is that like this guy, and so the other news is like add documents. This is idempotent. So I'm going to run this again and like nothing will happen, and that's okay. We index it again. When we do that, we can see like I didn't double count numbers here or anything. I still have 1,576. And that's primarily because we have primary keys and it knows what the difference between an update and a reindex is, or a new document. So when we call this, it's going to give us back some information here. So it's going to basically give us the async job that the server is going to process. It's going to tell us the ID of that job. And then we could go look if we cared to see if it's done, right? You can find out if your task has been completed on the indexing side. So let's just spit out what comes back here. We'll run this guy again. And you can see that it just gives me back update ID is 2. So if I come over here, I can come and look at, I think it's like indexes / cities / updates. And this is all in the docs. I just happen to know where these are. So you can see that like, it tells me like, oh, this was a documents edition and there was 5,976 and it took 2.44 seconds to process that. So that's, you know, you can just see if your thing is done yet or not. If you were, we're going to enqueue this all 25,000 of these company records here in just a minute, and it's going to process them all at once, and it will take 6 or 8 seconds to index them all. So we'll actually should be able to see it working. So let's
before we move on to that, Chris asked if you could do like a search for like a mid-word example. He's looking for Lahoma from Oklahoma City.
So by default, it's not great at that like partial mid-word, but you can, that's one of the relevancy things that you can kind of mess with is like how it treats stop words and also how it treats splits and concatenations. So by default, I don't remember off the top of my head, but it is doing something where if you search for like multiple words, it's searching them together and apart. On the split part, I'm not 100% sure about that. I think this one particular example is most likely governed by how it does the typo checking. So let's just play with this and just see what happens. That's probably pretty easy, right? If I do That doesn't really work. So that is a great example of I don't know, and probably the best. And so the interesting thing here is you can see it's searching every field by default. We're going to get to that in just a minute about how you control that.
So there's no like asterisk or like modifier or something?
There are some modifiers and asterisks for that, and I'm going to show you some of them. But a lot of that, again, like it's going to depend on what your data set looks like, right? And like to me, like it's funny because what I haven't done is actually put this next to Algolia for the same data set and see how they would handle it. But let's, if I remember, we'll come back to that and see if we can improve it based on changing some of those settings. So let's look here. So one of the other things we can do with, if we wanted to, is from this API, we can, let's do it in this file. So before we actually did this, if we wanted to, we could go index, delete all documents. Is another, they've done a nice job with this client of, modeling out the REST API. So you could come in here and you could just blow away an index. And that would be, maybe that would be like a nightly task that you would want to do, is like every night at midnight, like blow it away and re-index everything or something like that. Or like in development, right? Like I just want to start over, I want to wipe it out and try it again with new settings. They have that API available for you. Let's see, we talked about update IDs. So let's go and work on these companies, which are a little more complicated. So we'll just use this as a starting place. Index companies. So we've got clients. Let's do. So let's do a different little pattern here, which is maybe something like you would want to do to like fake that index already exists problem. Maybe we'll change this to be companies. This would return a bad request right now because companies doesn't exist. If we come over back to the stats API, we can see it's not in there. So maybe I would try something like create index companies finally, or something like this. You can do something like that, just to make sure that like if the index, if it should be the other way around. Try and get the index assuming it's going to exist, and if it doesn't, go ahead and just create it quietly. So then let's do companies, contents, companies.json. So this is, like I said, this is 80 something megs of JSON, just straight out of a database that we operate at my company. And so the interesting thing about these is they actually do have primary keys. So let's go ahead and do this. Let's see what happens. Move this, yes, little zoom. There we go, make that smaller. So let's see, we'll go ahead and do that. We've got companies, we'll do this. So we'll go ahead and throw these guys in here. Let's see how this goes. The next company is not found. See how I messed that up. Well, that doesn't work. Nope.
Maybe index and set or something. Like
It's possible I wrote that. It's possible I wrote that code and it was working for some other reason. That's fine. So now we see this like, yep, I already created it. It already exists. And this is, like I said, one of the few like annoyances with this thing. Let's pop over here and see what this guy's doing. So we've got it in here now. So this is going to go for a second, and this is mostly chugging on parsing all that JSON. So if we quickly go over here to indexes/company/update/0, you can see that it says in queued. It's not done yet. And what you can't hear because I have earbuds in is the little fan on my Mac Mini just picked up because it is now chugging on 28,000 documents that are like, you know, it's got a decent amount of data in there. So we can refresh this though, and we can see if it's done yet. And this usually takes, in this example, you know, there, it's done now. It took 32 seconds to index that. So you can see that it's all good now. If we come back here, we can see now companies has this. The interesting thing is, so this data set has the ID field for a company is called company ID. And it didn't complain about not being able to find a primary key because it was able to make one up based on what it saw in the data. And you can see that some of these are ragged, right? You can see that we actually have not every document in this data set has every field. Most of them have most of them. So this was able to kind of come up with all this data in here. And let's just go poke at this. This is what we're looking at here is primarily like e-commerce data. And so the example I'm going to use is Dell. So 1 millisecond, and it was, you know, you can see it searching. I've got some HTML in here. I've got the domain name. I've got a display. You know, it's actually searching across all these different fields here. You know, what's another one that we have? Target. But the cool thing is yeah, this is local, and there's not a lot of overhead for any of the network part of this. But like, you can just watch how fast. Let me zoom out here. You know, like to watch how fast this thing is responding to me typing. It's not. You can see that it's not debounced. It's not waiting for me to stop typing. Like, it can handle it as fast as you can send it. So let's do like, what's the other one? Like, right? Like, you can see that like as I'm typing apparel, like, you know, it's updating the highlights. And we'll show that in a minute because those highlights are actually coming from the server. That's not JavaScript. Those are coming off of the search engine, is the text highlighting inside the results. All right, so we've got a bigger data set now, so that's good. So let's look at how we would actually write the code to search this. So we'll make let's do this again, call this search.php. All right, so we've got a client. And so in order to search, you're going to want to still have that index object in your hand. So you're going to want to go and you know, get our company's index. And then I'm just going to make it so that it searches from the command line. So we'll do like results equals index search argv1. So let's just see how this does. And then we'll do print our results. So you can see I got a big old, you know, list of things here. The default, it brings back 20 documents by default. You can change that. So it comes back with an array. It's got hits with an array of all your documents that were in here. And then, you know, limit and offset. It's pretty, if you want to page through the search results. There's 125 total documents that matched, even though it only brought back 20. And it gives you they're very much excited to tell you how fast they were able to do it. So you can find that it took 1 millisecond to process that query. So that's kind of your basic searching, right? Like you take this thing right here and you wrap it in a controller and you send some requests to it and you have search. And like you're 70% of the way there right here. Like you can get in and tweak the relevancy and the stop words and like start adjusting it, but like you can build a pretty good experience with just this and like some like basic JavaScript, little jQuery, and you're good to go. So let's see, what else should we talk about? So let's talk about adding some more options to the search. So we'll leave that. I'll just go ahead and just hard code this for now. So this takes a second argument, which is an options array. And one of the things we can do is we can do limit. Right, so I could say just give me the top result if I wanted to do that. So you can see there's 125, limit was 1, and I only got 1 row back, and I got a much shorter document here. So that's fine. Another thing we can do is we can tell it which fields we would like to get back. So possibly, let's take the limit off. We'll stick with our limit of 20. Actually, let's leave it at 5 just so it doesn't scroll as much. So let's say I only really care about the names because I'm again, their party piece is building like fast type ahead search. So let's just get the names. So we can do, let's see what this is called. Look at my notes here. Attributes to retrieve. Let's do this. So you can see now I don't have all that garbage come back, right? Like I only have the fields that I want. On my laptop, this doesn't matter. But if you're talking about sending stuff over the wire on the internet, you probably don't want to be sending like that whole 100 kilobyte row times however many rows you want back out to the client, especially because potentially you have stuff indexed in there that you'd like to search on, but you don't necessarily want to expose to people either from a UI standpoint or from a they don't need to know about it standpoint. So you can definitely always customize this. We can go ahead and add I think country ID is an interesting one. Let's try that. Yeah, so we have Dell UK, Dell refurbished Canada in our country in our data set here. So we can do that. So let's do this. Let's add another thing. What we can do here is we can use, they have a concept called filters. And filters get you into, it's important to know that filtering is not faceting. If you dig into your search nerdery, those are not quite the same thing. Filtering kind of narrows the result set down. And I know faceting kind of feels like it does that, but it's not the same. But let's do this. So we can actually do kind of like a text mode string to add to this. So we can do country ID equals 1. Let's try that. So that theoretically should get us very similar results, but it should knock out these Canada and UK ones out of our result set. And you can see that it's done that. So now I had a limit of 5, and so those international ones are gone, and I have all country ID 1, which is the United States. But now I've got some other results in here. And it's an implementation detail, but this Dell parent is a placeholder record. So let's add this guy. Let's add base URL, which in this case happens to be the slug that we use for these on our websites. And you can see this guy doesn't have a base URL. He's not really ever meant to be out on the internet. And so it's in my database and I need it there for other parts of the system, but maybe I don't want this record showing up in my user-facing search. So I could come over here to my filters and I could say, and base URL not equal quote quote, right? And so I get kind of like, just like lightweight little and or not operators that I can use in here to filter these results down. And you can see that now that Dell parent is gone and something else this is not Dell at all. This is some other company entirely that's kind of floated up into the results set. So between, there's definitely the ability to index lots of stuff. And then depending on who is asking questions of the index, you can narrow down what's going to come back, both in number of fields and also like filtering on those specific fields. So let's look at just one or two more other things here. So let's look at, they had this concept that I thought was pretty neat that was called, let's do index companies as our starting point. Distinct attribute. So the interesting thing about this is distinct attribute is it is not a search option, it's an index option. So when you change this setting, you are changing the behavior of every search that goes to that index, and you can always change your mind. So one of the things it's going to do is it's basically going to say like, hey, I have, lots of products in my database, and there's, I've got 10,000 shirts, but it's really only like 4,000 shirts because the other rows in my system are color and size variants. And when I'm letting users search for those things, I don't actually want them to get a result where like they see like every size. I want to take them into like the detail page for that. And so I really want to like only see one value for any given field. So that's, you can set one of these fields on an index. So we're actually going to go look at the cities again. So we'll use cities for this. And we can use get index because that guy is still indexed. So we're going to let's do index update settings, which is how we get in and like start customizing the way this index behaves. And we'll say distinct attribute. Actually, this needs to be an array. Distinct attribute. Let's do state. Actually, let's do state. Let's do city. So this basically means that when I search for Austin on that thing, I will only ever get one row back for Austin. Where if I said state, so like I have an index of cities and states, and if somebody searches for Texas, I only ever want one row back for Texas. I can get in here and customize basically a group by on the index, and I can only do that for one field at a time. I can change it, but it's an index setting and you can only pick one. So let's just see how this changes it. So one of the things this is going to happen, so everything goes correctly here. So this went and happened. This would have given me an update ID because it actually is going to go re-index that data with this thing applied to it. So if we come back over and we actually would see this behavior right in our web interface because it's part of the index. So if we do Austin, you can see that for the value of Austin, there is only one result coming back now. Whereas before, there's actually 3 Austins in this data set. So it actually went and changed the way this index behaves. And now everything that talks to this index picks up that change. That's a setting. It's not like a search time configuration option. So another thing that we can do is we can, let's go ahead and delete this index. Let's make another file here. More settings. So kind of some other settings that you can do with indexes. You can come in and you can set at the index level what fields are searchable or not. And you can also set what fields are displayable. And so displayable means where we were doing in our search example, where we were saying attributes to retrieve, a displayable attribute is basically the default setting for that. So you could say every field is searchable, but I don't want to specify this every single time. I would like to have a preset 6 attributes or whatever that come back in the results. So let's do index, delete all. Let's just blow away this whole index. So delete all documents. Let's just re-index cities entirely. Well, actually, we'll go ahead and just for good measure, we'll delete it. I'm going to delete it. I'm going to create it. And we're going to repopulate it. Let's do that. All right, so that's chugging away. Should be basically done now. It is. You can see now that I've blown that away, and you can go back and modify the settings, but I just wanted to, for the demo purposes, just to start completely fresh. You can see now that I've got more than one Austin showing, so I'm back to where I belonged on that one. So let's come in here and change a setting. So let's say index update settings, displayed attributes, state. Let's go ahead and run this guy. Again, that comes back instantly, even though it's going to take it maybe a second or two for it to apply that setting. So you can see now, like, I only display state, right? Even though I'm searching by city, and it is searching, I'm only going to show state in my results. And that saves me from having to say only retrieve state every time I ever talk to this thing. Especially if you were on a bigger team or you had a lot of different people working on it. This might save you from accidentally sending a bunch of crap over the wire that you didn't want to. So similar, you can do the opposite of that. You can say searchable attributes is state. So let's try this guy. And we come back here. And so now there are no states that match that. So I can do Texas. But now I've come and I've said still state is only displayed, right? So let's come back and add displayable attributes, displayed attributes. And I believe this supports wildcards if you wanted to like not have to list everything out and undo something bad that you did. So now we're back. So we're searching, let's say like, so we're searching Missouri, Mississippi, but there are no cities matching that. So you can customize the way that works as well. The one other thing before we wrap that I wanted to show you is the highlighting part. So if we come over here and let's make one, let's just go customize this guy. So let's get rid of these and we'll only do name. We'll get rid of our filters. Don't really need those. But then I believe this is called, what is this called? Highlight. Make sure I type the right thing in here so I don't look dumb. Well, I've forgotten what that was. So we're just going to go look it up in the documentation, which is a good search parameters, attributes to highlight. That's what it's called. So we can do attributes to highlight. And so what this will give back to us So now in your documents, you get this underscore formatted, and it goes and just puts a HTML tag around the highlighted matches inside the documents that come back. So then you can style those. That's you just throw some CSS on that if you wanted to highlight those to an end user. So that's how this is working. This is not JavaScript. This is just styled HTML that's coming right back from the server, which is just a nice, you don't really have to do anything aside from just write CSS on there and then you're good to go. So that's the nice thing. And Algolia does stuff like that as well, right? They send you kind of like utility HTML back to the client, which really just makes your life easier. So that is my TED Talk on MeiliSearch. So again, super easy to play with, and like you can get going really quickly with this. As far as we can tell, like the ops overhead of this is nearly nothing. Like you throw this on a box you got somewhere, or spin up a T2.micro, and like your CMS now has like awesome search compared to the like statement you were doing before. And you can definitely just kind of grow from there. I could see you getting to a point if you have massive scale where this isn't there yet. You should go use Algolia. We're not abandoning Algolia, but we have some internal tools that we have millions of documents in that are updated regularly, but not searched frequently. And so the way certain tools are priced, Algolia being one of them, like this solves our entire use case, and it's free. What we haven't done, we don't have this facing the internet. We have this on a bunch of internal CMSs, tools, and some APIs as well. We have some APIs that actually point directly at MeiliSearch as well. So, I think it's early, jury's still out, but super easy to play with. And I thought it was cool. And so I just wanted to share it with you guys. That's what I got.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for the talk, Josh. That was really interesting. I think we have some time for some questions. So if anyone has questions for Josh, and I see one here, but I'm basically going to stall for a little bit because I think there's a delay on YouTube. Please ask your questions for Josh. Now is the time to get them in. So Jeremiah asks, when implementing search into an app, so would you update the index every time a CRUD operation happened?
Generally speaking, yes. Assuming that it's free. So we've done it both ways. One of the other search technologies that we had in production until this year was, gosh, what is it called? Thing that indexes MySQL, Sphinx, Sphinx Search. And so Sphinx Search doesn't work that way. Sphinx Search is like a SQL query that runs on a cron job, and you can run it every second, every minute, whatever you want. This is fast enough. And if you have it, I would do it if I could and there was no penalty, I would do it every time it's updated. I think I would draw the line by saying if it's enough of a performance hit when somebody clicks the save button that it makes the browser spin for 700 milliseconds instead of 200 milliseconds. And you start to get into that like, okay, well, the way we fix that is we now put these into a job queue. And we have our CRUD updates go into a job queue, and then there's a worker that's calling index on those in the background. Before I went there, would go to the cron job, right? And I would just say like, let's just update the index every minute or 2 minutes or 5 minutes or half an hour. Because I would not really love adding that extra complexity, but to like get the stuff indexed or like, this happened to me a bunch of times. Like you start queuing search updates and then like that thing stops working, and then like what's indexed and what's not indexed, and like your answer there is re-index everything anyway. So I don't know. The cool thing about this and Algolia and other technologies that are like this is that it is so fast in my experience that you can do it just add that API call right into your CRUD update and index it on the fly. The one thing you gotta be careful about when doing that is like, you do want to trap those exceptions. So if for some reason the search index fails, that you don't accidentally come back to a user and make them think that their CRUD update failed because there was some sort of server error.
Some interesting food for thought there. It all depends on the scale, I suppose. I guess I have a question, kind of like, so you early on you touched on kind of like it's running in Docker. Now, is it like, do you have one of these things running, or is it like a, how well does it play like when it's like there's a whole bunch of them running at once?
As far as I know, currently it's assumed that you will run one of them, and if you need scale, you get more CPU. You just put it on a bigger server, which is very much the Redis philosophy, right?
Yeah.
Like, you want to go bigger server with Redis until you just can't afford to do it anymore, and then go to a cluster.
Like,
as far as I know, there's no cluster here.
Redis
I'm actually
pre version 5, I guess, right? Was all before they went the clustered thing.
So actually, I'm just going to go pull up and see what we are running this on in production. So the production instance of this that we're running, the biggest one, has millions, but not tens of millions of documents in it, and it's probably hit I don't know, tens of thousands of times a day, which is nothing in the grand scheme of things. But I was just going to go flip over to our Kubernetes cluster and see how many CPUs and how much RAM we have assigned to that service.
So is it it does a pretty good job of like persisting the data through like restarts and whatnot. I mean,
yeah. So if you're running it in Docker, you're going to want a volume, a Docker volume, and they have that in their docs. There's basically, there's this one directory that they have, that data.ms that it created in my little project directory. Everything's in that one place. There's no config file, and there's no like other lock file or anything else that if you just mount that one directory in a Docker volume, you're good to go.
Let me see if there's any other questions here. This was a while ago, but sorry if I pronounced your name wrong here. Adele, Adiel, asks like how well does it do with the fuzzy searching? So I think this goes back to the question of the asterisks and the plus minus kind of like operator stuff, like in general, I guess.
In general, I haven't pushed it that hard. A lot of our use case is on exact match searches, or it's on exact match or like leading and trailing. So it's type ahead, where like you're gonna see that you're on the right path as you're typing, and so we don't notice a lot of that, and so I haven't really pushed it that hard on that. What I would say is I think the typo sensitivity is the least important aspect of the default search, and so if you find that that's a problem with your users or your use case, that would be a place where I think you'd want to go customize typo sensitivity being more important than exact matchedness, right? Because by default it prefers an exact match as the most important thing, and typos are the least important. So you might want to mix that ordering up a little bit to see like what the right answer is based on like, again, like maybe you have search logs and you like grab your top 100 most important terms that people type into your search box and just try it out.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could you could add your own fuzzy searching over time, kind of like, fixing the data yourself.
Yeah, certainly can. You can add synonyms as well, right? Like, so you can, and the synonyms are like arbitrary. So like if you find that like people always type something wrong, and they type it wrong the same way, you can just add a synonym for it, and now it becomes an exact match.
Interesting. So did you find the
Yeah,
AWS?
so we're running
info?
it on a quarter of a CPU core and a gig of RAM. So
Wow.
not much.
Yeah.
And that's single digit millions of documents that are, maybe they are, I don't know, 20 kilobytes of document. So it's not a big, massive thing, but it's pretty efficient. It's Rust, it's not JVM, right? Elasticsearch is JVM, and so like you're going to need some horsepower to get a performant Elasticsearch going.
Yeah, it's like you start at 8 gigs and
it doesn't
get your
wallet
crash.
out.
Yeah. Ian, did you? I think yeah.
Another horsepower question. Do you know how well it scales to multi-core?
I don't. I've not tested that.
I mean,
as given that we only run it on a quarter of a core, but no, I don't. I actually was trying to when I was closing apps on my computer, I was like, why don't I have Activity Monitor open? I was trying to watch it on Activity Monitor, and I don't have a data set that's big enough to really work out the indexer so that like I can like get it indexing and have it be indexing for a minute while I'm trying to watch it on Activity Monitor. So in my toy to low scale production use cases, I haven't been able to exercise it enough to notice.
Okay, thanks.
Cool. Any other questions for Josh? Get him now, or for the panel. We've got a great panel here. Any PHP questions? I guess I could go over. I'm going to throw up your info, Josh. For next month, for the people that registered, the link that you used to join this month, I believe is just going to be the same. I'll see if I can send out the email ahead of time just to make sure that you can have it, at the top of the inbox there. But the way that the registration works, it's you sign up once and then you're in for all future events until we get to a limit, and we'll figure that out if we get close. But please check with your respective meetup groups for the sign up link if you're watching on YouTube or catching this in a recording. And you can participate kind of live by the Zoom webinars or on YouTube. So you have multiple options there. Try to make it easy as possible. A lot of good feedback from people. Josh on YouTube in the comments really enjoyed the presentation. So I'm going to pass it over to my other co-organizers here, and if anybody has some like final comments for Josh or for the panelists, Bobby or Chris.
I'll just say thanks again to Josh. I appreciate your presentation. It was really sharp. Interested in learning more about this on when I get a chance. And thanks to the Austin and Boston guys for including Atlanta. I feel like they were looking for another rhyming city and ran out of them. So they started with the A's, I guess, and brought us in. So I appreciate you all very much.
Well, glad to have you. Yeah, so a little background like on how this whole thing started. I think that the thanks goes, and he's actually on the call, Ben Edmonds. Ben, if you want to unmute and plug your stuff, you can go right ahead here at the end. But thank you to Ben for kind of kicking this off and getting all the organizers together. I went like, Ben may not be ready to be on mic, so.
No,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah, nothing to plug. I'm just excited this came together. It helps all of us, and hopefully it helps our speakers get a wider audience. I'm really looking forward to joining forces for the next several months at least. Thanks everyone for coming.
Awesome.
Yeah, and thanks, Josh, for giving us your time. And hope we see you guys next month.
Great. Well, thanks to everyone. I think that's it for questions. Josh, really great talk once again. Looking forward to Merge PHP or we came up with all sorts of interesting names for this. So if you have some suggestions for the PHP mega meetup group, certainly let us know. Yeah, thank you all for joining, and we'll see you next month.
Yeah.
Later.